Welcome back. Today we're talking about complex emotions. Ooh. We've done this once before. We've talked about these complex, very specific words for emotions that are things you've probably felt but are kind of hard to explain. Maybe you haven't really thought about them before. The words from last time were all from a book called The Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows by John Koenig. I'm looking at a very cherry-picked and condensed list because Mr. John Koenig kind of rambles in his definitions a little bit. Like, let me give you an example. This one right here. Opia. The ambiguous intensity of looking someone in the eye which can feel simultaneously invasive and vulnerable. But the definition in the book is the ambitious intensity of looking someone in the eye which can feel simultaneously invasive and vulnerable. Their pupils glittering, bottomless and opaque, as if you were peering through a hole in the door of a house, able to tell that there's someone standing there, but unable to tell if you're looking in or looking out. It's like, that's not how definitions work, John. So anyway, we're reading the shortened definitions of these words for both of our sakes, I think. We'll start with the one I already read, Opia. The ambiguous intensity of looking someone in the eye which can feel simultaneously invasive and vulnerable. I feel like that's not that groundbreaking. I think that's just kind of a thing, but maybe it's nice to have a word for it. Opia or Opia. I think Opia makes more sense. But yeah, looking someone in the eye is, I don't know if I'd call it intense. It's vulnerable for you, but you're impacting the same vulnerability on them at the same time. Like, it's like a shared vulnerability. And granted, you're just looking someone in the eye, it's not that big a deal, but I get it. I don't know if you've ever known someone who just stares and it feels like they're looking at your soul after like a couple seconds. And you gotta kind of like do the casual kind of look away. I know for me, I'll like act like my face is itchy. I don't know why that's my thing, but if I'm talking to someone, I'm good with eye contact for the most part. I'll look you in the eye and then I'll be like, oh dude, that's crazy, man. Dang, that's crazy. Dang, that's crazy. Dang, that's crazy. I don't know why that works for me for some reason. I mean, obviously that's not how I would talk to someone. Like the worst person to talk to if I'm just saying basically, dude, that's crazy. But the longer you hold the eye contact, the like more invasive it feels. Half a second of that, fine. 1 second of that, nah, still fine. 2 seconds, this is getting a little weird. 3 seconds, okay, one of us has got to give. 4 seconds, you feel like they can see your soul. And 5 seconds, you might as well just get married. That's too long. But I don't know, it's more like a confidence thing probably. I assume, I'll let you guys know if I'm ever confident enough. It's like nervousness to be all looking around and stuff. But like, there's gotta be a balance, right? You can't just death glare me the whole conversation. You gotta take breaks. That's Opia. I don't know what else to say about that one. That's pretty basic. Monochopsis or monachopsis. The subtle but persistent feeling of being out of place. Like you don't fit the context that you're in and it makes you feel kind of uncomfortable. This is interesting because I feel like I feel this a lot, and I feel like this could just be imposter syndrome, which I do experience at times, but I feel like this is like one side step from imposter syndrome. This isn't just, and this is just me spitballing, I don't really know. This is all made up anyway. These are all made up words, so let's just lower the expectations a bit here. As soon as people are discussing the subtle nuances in the red wine they're drinking, and they're talking about the ash from the volcano that erupted that year, and that's why this particular vintage has this ashy taste to it, I'm like, bro, I should not be here. Sure, I'm able to like make conversation, and I'm like, maybe the people here don't think I'm out of place. You know, maybe they don't perceive me that way. It's not even really about what they think of me. It's like, I just know that this isn't my place. I shouldn't be here. Now, that's a very real life example of it, but I assume that this applies to times where maybe there's not a good reason for you to feel that way. Like maybe you're just at work with your coworkers. Maybe you're all kind of the same in the sense that none of you really fit there because you're just working there because you need a paycheck, of course. And so maybe you feel like you're out of place there. And I feel like that's a normal thing to feel in some contexts, but the persistent feeling of being out of place is interesting, because is that like chronic? Like no matter where you are, you feel like you're out of place? Because that's pretty hardcore. I assume you don't feel out of place when you're like at home. That'd be a nightmare. Imagine being at home and feeling like you shouldn't be there. I don't know what situation this applies to, if it's all or some, but yeah, I definitely know that feeling in certain environments. I think in times where it was earned. So if that's what they're referring to, then I get it. But if it's like, hey, I feel like this all the time, that sucks. I'm sorry. I don't know how to pronounce this one. The bittersweetness of having arrived in the future, seeing how things turn out, but not being able to tell your past self. Ooh, this one's kind of interesting. Say you achieve something you've been working for like 10 years or something, and 10 years ago you would be really proud, but you can't tell them that. Like, they're long gone, they're 10 years ago. Whenever you set a goal for yourself, the person who sets the goal isn't the one who gets to experience it. And that's, of course, not really true because you are the same person, technically speaking, but you know what I mean? Like, for me, when I was like 16, I was like, I'm gonna be a YouTuber someday. And I worked on that for a while, eventually kind of gave up on it, and then lo and behold, look at me now, I kind of am a YouTuber, but it was a completely different version of me that set out with that goal, I guess. I'm happy to be doing it now, but it does feel like it was the continuation of someone else's plan. I've seen this happen with like college degrees, not to scare anyone who's in college or anything, but you make such a huge commitment to pursue a degree of some kind or a career. You make that decision when you're like fresh out of high school all the times, and then you spend 4 or so years working on your degree or whatever it ends up being for you, and then you get to the other side of it and it's a completely different person that started this process, right? Like 18-year-old me and like 23, 24-year-old me, two completely different people. And then same with 24-year-old me and current me, like two completely different people. So I don't know if this is exactly what they're saying here, but the idea that you who sets the goal, that's a couple years out, you will change into a new person by the time you achieve that goal. So I don't know, that's kind of profound, right? This could just be stuff that's only deep if you're like 14 years old. It's like, dang, that's crazy. Like, bro, if I say I'm gonna take out the trash tomorrow, it's a completely different person who takes the trash out tomorrow. It's not even me. It's tomorrow me. It's like, it's not that deep. I get that, but the more time you put between the goal being set and the goal being achieved, the more it feels like two different people. And I think that's interesting. Is it interesting? I felt this same feeling when I did the last complex emotion video, and that was that I just felt so stupid making the video. But then I liked how it turned out, and a lot of people really liked the video. It was very different for me, I think. We could probably make up a word for this emotion, but the feeling of feeling stupid for analyzing something in a room by oneself with no input to know if you are even making sense, and then doing that like 20 times and posting it on the internet. It's a weird feeling, all right? But people liked the last video, so we're doing it again. Velicor, the strange wistfulness of used bookshops. All right, yeah, I mean, that's just kind of like a cozy, I don't want to say old-timey because it's not like books are old-timey, but like books span very far back into history. Like, books have been around for millennia, and so you get this feeling of being in like an old bookstore of like, these books all have a story. Some books in this room might be twice as old as I am, or 10 times as old as I am. I don't know. Somehow when I read that, I still pictured the wand shop from Harry Potter, which isn't even a bookstore, it's a wand store. I'm not one to like peruse old bookshops that often, of course, but there's a certain feel to it where it feels like you're in a world full of knowledge, a library of knowledge, you could even call it. Not that deep, but interesting. Rubatosis, the unsettling awareness of your own heartbeat. This is me as a kid, this is me as an adult. Not as much as an adult, I feel like I'm better now, but there's something that's always kind of freaked me out about my own heartbeat. I'm okay, like I'm normal, I promise. If you have to tell them you're normal, are you? But as a kid, like a little kid, like maybe 8 or 9, I would listen to my heartbeat at night and I would convince myself there was something weird about it, like it was beating weird, because heartbeats are just weird, right? It's the only thing on us that's constantly moving in a way that you can feel it. It's there, it's pumping, and guess what happens if it stops pumping? You die. So it needs to be pumping, but it feels weird to be able to feel it pumping. You don't want to be aware of how fragile you are, maybe. I think that's why it freaked me out as a kid, because I know how important the heart is. And so it always felt like, since I'm not in control of it, but I need it to happen, it felt like it's like you need it to beat. It's good to feel it beating because that means that you're alive. I think as a kid, I would always freak out about like if I thought about it too much, in the same way that thinking about breathing makes you stop breathing. You like switch to manual mode. Like if I thought about my heartbeat too much, I would switch to manual mode but not know how to make it beat again. So obsessed with listening to it, but then I'd be scared because I'd be like, if I pay too much attention to my heart, I'll switch into manual mode and then I'll die because my heart's not beating anymore because I don't know how to make it beat. Then I'd be stressed about it, so I'd make it beat faster, and that was not good because then I'm thinking about it even more. Anyway, I had a lot of anxiety problems as a kid, and I'm like mostly a lot better now, but like obviously my whole channel is kind of about anxiety, so like, you know, we're working on it one step at a time. But yes, talking about that makes me realize that I had lots of problems as a kid. I was very much hypochondriac as a wee lad. But yeah, this one definitely hits me right here. Juska? A hypothetical conversation that you compulsively play out in your head. Man, these are all me. I hope these are all everyone. I hope these are just things that we all do sometimes. Because this is me too. I definitely do this as well. I'm definitely one to go through conversations that I know I'm gonna have eventually in my head to kind of like see how it is. Or like if something happens and I'm not sure if I should talk to that person about that thing or whatever it is, a conflict or a request or something. I'll kind of go through the conversation to see if it sounds reasonable. Like, do I actually care enough to like bring this up, you know? And it helps me a lot, I like to think. I think it's good for me. That's what I'm going to tell the experts when they are about to study my brain. I think this is good for me. I'm not hurting anybody. In fact, I'm making sure that I don't hurt anybody by going over the conversations in advance. The problem is I'm much more articulate and organized up here than I am out here. A hypothetical conversation that you compulsively play out in your head is a jouska? A jouska? I'm going to say jouska. I think that sounds better to me. Like joust. Yeah, I definitely jouska when I'm driving a lot, and I definitely jouska in the shower, and that sounds weird. Chrysalism? The amniotic tranquility of being indoors during a thunderstorm? Okay, amniotic? Isn't that like related to eggs or like embryo? Amniotic definition. Relating to the amnium. Okay, that's helpful. The innermost membrane that encloses the embryo of a mammal, bird, or reptile. Okay, what are you smoking, John? The amniotic tranquility? Huh? What does that mean? The tranquility of being indoors during a thunderstorm. Yeah, that's nice. That moment when you are... Actually, no, it's not. The tranquility of being indoors during a rainstorm, that's nice. Thunderstorm? I'm gonna have to say it's not that tranquil. It can be, but it's not always that tranquil because thunderstorm, hello, thunder, loud boom, not that hypnotic and tranquil. Kind of loud, boom, shakes everything, flashing lights. It's kind of a lot of things that aren't tranquil. It's kind of a weird feeling like sitting indoors and just seeing the world around you flash and your house gently rumble with the booms of thunder. It's a weird feeling for sure. If you were someone who is tranquilized by thunderstorm, there's probably a better word for that, but someone who becomes tranquil in a thunderstorm, it's called chrysalism, anecdote or anecdote, a conversation in which everyone is talking but no one is listening. This is huge. This is like the ultimate, like, I'm 14 and this is deep, but it's like when everyone's small talking and no one really cares about the conversation, but you're all kind of doing it because you have to. You know, it's like a picture of a bunch of like business people talking at like a business party, you know, and they're all talking about how's the wife, how are the kids, oh, the game last night. It's kind of like scripted in a way where everything you're saying is just like the obvious response to everything. Someone says, oh, we just got a dog, and someone has to say, what kind of dog? What's their name? No matter what their answer is, you say, oh, that's cute, or what a great name. And then someone else asks, what did you guys do this weekend? And then someone says, I went and did blank weekend activity. Say any activity here, and then everyone else has to go, oh, that sounds great. That's awesome. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like this scripted thing that plays out. And that would be an anecdote. Anecdote sounds kind of cool. It's like when the conversation is only anecdotes and like small talk responses to everything. Definitely a cool one. I feel like that's a unique thing to define. I hate those conversations, by the way. I think that's what people think of when they think of small talk. Like, small talk isn't that bad. It's when it's this kind of small talk that it's horrible. Small talk can be cool. I don't mind getting to know someone, but when it's like this totally shallow exchange of like required information that we're just kind of like tossing back and forth like a ping pong ball, it's like, what is the point of this? I'm not having fun. Neither of us is trying to score. I don't mean score, you know what I mean? Like, no one's trying to, you know what I mean? Conversations are only worthwhile if you're trying to score. What a great quote. But yeah, that was a good one. I like that one. Ellipsism, kind of like a ellipses, like a ... A sadness that you'll never be able to know how history will turn out. I feel this one very rarely, but once in a while. But I just felt this. Not exactly like this, but I was out with the opportunity to look up at the stars from far away from light pollution of the city that I live in. And there's something about looking at the stars, like when there's a lot of them. Dozens. No, but like a full sky of stars. If you haven't seen that in a while, go do it. It's profound no matter who you are, I'd like to think. If you look at the stars and you feel nothing, then there's something wrong with you. It should make you feel something, I think. And what it makes me feel, amongst a myriad of other things, is this weird feeling of, I feel like just a guy on a rock in space. So I look at the stars and I think, I'm never gonna like know what it's like to go up there. I'm not gonna get to hear about what happens next. And I think that's this feeling. It triggers for me when I look at the stars, but I think this can happen probably whenever. Just the reality of like, man, I'll never know what the iPhone 50 looks like because I'll be dead by then. Whatever your thing is. I'll never get to see the ending of One Piece. And I feel like that works in a hopeful way and a negative way, where it's like, man, whatever humanity does long term, like realistically speaking, humanity will probably live through my lifetime. And that's being maybe a little generous. I like to think that we'll make it that far, right? Let's say I live another 50 years or so. I think humanity can make it 50 more years or so. I don't know what condition we'll be in 50 more years, but I think we'll make it that far, right? But then what happens after that is none of my business, or, you know, I won't get to see it. Whether we thrive past that point and figure everything out. You know, we travel space, we see the galaxy, we invent crazy technology, we cure all sorts of disease. That's not for me to experience. I get this bit of human history, and that is a weird thing to think about. It makes me feel like not sad completely, but kind of sad. I don't know. Maybe it is sad. And the definition here is a sadness that you'll never be able to know how history will turn out. And it is kind of true. It's like humanity is this massive book of all these pages of history, and you can always go backwards and read old chapters and see how we got to this point. But the next chapter hasn't been written yet, and you're never going to get to read it. And you know there's more. You know there's more. I don't know. There will be a day where I'm not around. And that's kind of a weird thing to think about. I'm the kind of person who likes to know everything I can, and so there's things that I can't know, and that kind of makes me bummed. I don't know what those youngsters are going to be up to after I'm not here to observe them. It sounds weird. You know what I mean? Lachicism? The desire to be struck by disaster, to survive a plane crash, or to lose everything in a fire. Whoa. Y'all feeling this one? The closest I can relate to this one, not that it's about me, but I think that's the best way I can explain it, is if I try to figure out what it means from like my own perspective. As I definitely have felt like, man, my life's getting kind of boring and repetitive. I need something to shake it up. I don't usually think I want to be in a plane crash, or I want my house to burn down and lose everything. Like, that's not usually my next thought. But if I can feel the first thought, I can understand someone thinking the second thought. Maybe you think that and you immediately are like, that's silly. But you still think, I should survive a plane crash. Like, that would make your life interesting. The surviving part is key. You don't want to be in a plane crash and die. That's not great. But if you survive a plane crash, you'll just be traumatized forever, I guess. Maybe you want your house to burn down and lose everything you own. That's not bad. I mean, that is bad. It's very, very bad. But you know what I mean? Like, it's not bad in comparison. I feel like this is a little unhinged, but it's not like so insane. Like, if someone comments and says, I felt that exact thing, I wouldn't be like, you need to go see a psychiatrist. I'd be like, you know what? That's kind of like wanting to start over in a way, but like in a very bombastic way that it could actually happen. Just called being in a plane crash bombastic. That's not great. But you know what I mean? Like, you can't start over from scratch. Like, as a person, you can't like be a kid again and make different choices. But you could technically force yourself to start over by like selling everything you own and moving to a new place and not talking to anyone from before. Like, there's things you can do to get like as close to a fresh start as you can. This is like the extreme version of like something crazy happens, like a plane crash or a house fire, and then you're like, man, my life is different now, no matter what, and you got to kind of start over. Both those things would change who you are as a person, probably, whether you like it or not. Like, you wouldn't be the same person after a plane crash, and then maybe that's the feeling that you want, the desire to be struck by something that shakes up your life in a big possibly negative way. I hope that it's not so much that you want something bad to happen to you. I hope it's more that you want something wild to happen to you. Because if you specifically want something really bad to happen to you, that's like self-loathing type stuff, and I feel like that makes it a little less fun. Not that a plane crash is fun. I keep saying words that aren't right for this context, but you know what I mean. Things that change your life but not ruin you as a person. But then again, plane crash, I think that would be rough. I think that one goes over my head a little bit, so if someone has felt that, please let me know. Would love to hear about your desire to be in a plane crash. Let's talk. Adrenitis, frustration with how long it takes to get to know someone. Frustration with how long it takes to get to know someone. I don't think I've ever felt that before. Frustration with how long it takes to get to know someone. So you're getting to know someone, but you're like annoyed, like, why is it taking so long? Or like you meet someone that you like and you're like, yeah, I gotta go through years of getting to know them, and I don't really have time for that. I guess kind of. I definitely have never consciously felt this. I get that, like, there's been times where I like someone that I work with and I think that they're cool, but you can't just come out and be like, okay, we are best friends now, like, we're gonna do everything together. Even if you can kind of feel that in a 6 months to a year time, you could be those kinds of friends. But again, I've never really consciously been like, I gotta get to know this person. Freaking stupid. I've never felt that before, but I feel like that's making me think, man. There's another one for the old noggin. It is kind of funny to me to be frustrated by that, like actually frustrated, not just like man, I wish we could just be best friends right now. Imagine just being like sort of pissed, You make a new friend that you really like, but you're just like kind of pissed off because you're not like better friends already, You can't let out your crazy, quirky self quite yet. You can't make poop jokes yet. The day will come. Patience, my friend. So that's an interesting one. I like that. I'm not going to pronounce this one, but looks like a German word to me. Again, they're all made up. So it's a made up German word. The feeling of returning home after an immersive trip only to find it fading rapidly from your awareness. Again, not one I really consciously thought about as like a thing, but it's like, yeah, sometimes you do something wild. Like when I went to Japan last month or 2 months ago now, when I got back, or on my way home rather, I was like, I'm done being in Japan for this trip. Like I was looking forward to it for a long time. When I was there, it was like, oh my gosh, I'm in Japan. And like now it's been almost 2 months since I was there, and it feels like a weird dream, It's like I can picture what it was like to be there because it was not that long ago, but it feels like that wasn't really me that was there. Like it feels like a dream I had, And I think it will continually fade, and how it made me feel will fade. And that's kind of like, I don't know, a little bit of a bummer that memory doesn't like stay sharp longer. Like no matter how crazy something you do is, as soon as it's over and is now committed to memory, it starts to fade because it's no longer happening. You do something, it's real while you're doing it, but as soon as you're done doing that thing and it becomes a memory, memory fades. That one kind of makes me feel sad, makes me feel like nothing I do matters because it just becomes this like ethereal fading memory after it's over. But you know what, let's not think about that too much. It's just whatever. Memories are fun. I like having memories. I like having stories to tell, and telling those stories keeps those memories alive. So isn't that sweet? Let's move on. Liberosis, the desire to care less about things. That's like me, man. My biggest flaw is that I just care too much and I just love too strongly. My biggest weakness is how much I care about people, man. Yeah, I think this one makes sense. You care about the people in your life and they've got their own drama going on and you're worried kind of on their behalf. Like that would be exhausting if you cared about everyone's problems and your own, and then the globe's problems and like the problems going on in the world. There's so much to care about, right? Like I could just sit here for like 10 hours and list things that are things you could worry about, right? And you have to choose not to. And if you can't choose not to, you would be like, man, I wish I could care less about these things. Maybe. I could be overthinking it. Like it could be a much more small thing. Like I just wish that I didn't care so much about individual things, like small scale. Like if someone honks at you in traffic and then it like ruins your entire day because you're thinking that person was mad at me, but they didn't even realize that I was actually doing it right and the person in front of me was the one that made me slam on my brakes and blah, blah, blah. And you kind of go, like maybe it's more like that thing where you just care too much about everything and you can't like let things go. Like you can't like let a bad thing just roll off you. There's probably a huge spectrum to this one, so I'm not going to say what it is, but yeah, this one seems reasonable. The desire to care less about things. I wish I cared less about whether or not you're going to like this video. I really hope that you do, but I wish I didn't care, you know? Shouldn't matter to me, right? Altschmer's? Weariness with the same old issues that you've always had, the same boring flaws and anxieties that you've been gnawing on for years. Felt. Weariness about the same old issues that you always had, the same boring flaws and anxieties that you've been gnawing on for years. I think we can all relate to this one, right, guys? Right, guys? Guys? Like, yeah, I mean, there's things that just make us who we are. Sometimes I get tired of being me, you know? I feel like it'd be cool to be someone else or whatever, and I think that's maybe this feeling of like, man, I feel like I should have figured out this personality flaw by now to where I don't do this thing anymore or whatever it is. And it just seems like by now, if I haven't figured it out, I probably never will. And this is more of a younger me problem, because I think you just kind of learn as you get older to not be as bothered by these things, even though I haven't conquered them all, let me tell you. But yeah, I understand the weariness that comes from like, why does this thing still bother me so much? Why do I always react this way to this situation? Even though I've been aware that I do it and I hate that I do it, why do I keep doing it? You know? I'm being vague because I'm not really thinking of any specific thing, but I'm sure you can put in whatever your thing is into the blank there and kind of get what this is. Assuming I'm understanding this correctly, which is always a possibility that I'm not, because one of my flaws is reading comprehension. Okay, last one. It looks like it says alcoholism, but I think it's alcoholism. Alcoholism? The awareness of the smallness of your perspective. Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I'm glad that these ones aren't all so vague that I don't get them. These all make sense. Like, this is what I want. Some of the ones from last video I like totally did not really get. I was like, I don't really know who this applies to, but not me. These are all pretty reasonable. This one is just like, I'm just one guy. I could spend my entire life trying to understand the world around me and trying to become as cultured as possible and expand my horizons as much as I can and open my mind to every concept that I'm presented with or whatever, and my perspective will still be like a speck. Like, the world is huge. And don't even get me started on the universe. That's even bigger, you know? But yeah, the world's huge, and no matter what I do, I'm always gonna be this tiny little guy with this tiny little perspective, thinking I know stuff when I really don't. And yeah, I feel like that's just normal to feel that way sometimes. It's good to be aware of that, maybe, because the word is the awareness of the smallness of your perspective. I feel like sometimes people think that they have a bigger perspective than they really do. People will take their perspective and act like it applies to everything. They, like, because they had this bad experience, they know what this whole thing is like. I know this isn't that deep, but I think it's true that you should be aware that you have a perspective based on the things around you and the things you've experienced. So yes, I highly recommend alcoholism. I'm sorry, I meant alcoholism. Anyway, that is all. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that I didn't just embarrass myself for the last however long, probably half an hour or so. If you want to read more words like this, you can look up the Book of Obscure Sorrows by John Koenig. I don't know if we'll get the opportunity to do this again, because I don't think that there's that many more words like this. I think I looked through the actual Book of Obscure Sorrows, and like 80% of them I was like not really into. So I think we've looked at most of the good ones, and then most of the good ones that we've just found on the internet. So I think we're running out of good words. But hopefully you enjoyed this one. Hopefully you related to something or enjoyed hearing me talk about how weird I was as a kid. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you haven't yet. We just hit 150,000 subscribers, which is huge. I feel like it was just yesterday that I got this guy, the 100,000 button award thing, and now we're 150 and on our way to 200k. So that's cool. I just wish I cared less about the numbers, man. Who cares? It's just a bunch of numbers, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. That feeling when the video's done, but you're not done with the video? Crazy.